Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Movement for African Emancipation discussion on the Nigerian election. So today we'll be looking at the Nigerian election from a Pan-Africanist perspective. So we hope that you stay with us till the end of the program. And if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat. If you have any question for any of the discussants, you can put it in the chat, and I will make sure they respond to your questions. So just to give you a quick background on what we'll be discussing. Yeah, we'll be discussing about the presidential election that was conducted 2 weeks ago. We already have a winner. The winner was the president-elect was elected was Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC, the All Progressive Congress candidates. But there have been reaction from the electorate about the credibility of the election, that the election was rigged. And so today here we'll be discussing all that. Some are alleging that there were vote buying. Some were complaining about the the INEC on how they conducted the election, that the election was not credible, and that the facilities that were put in place to make sure that that rigging can be rigging is curtailed are not, being used. So, in fact, two of the top leading candidates are in court right now, trying to contest the credibility of the results, to say that it was rigged and that they won. So today with me here I have my comrades, Comrade Go, Adebayo, and Jide, who will be speaking to us about the election. So to begin proper, I would ask our comrades here to introduce themselves. First will be Comrade Shango, then Comrade Adebayo, then Comrade Jide. So, comrades, could you please unmute and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Comrade Shango. Welcome to this discussion, first of many, where we'll be discussing current affairs and ideological global issues that affect Pan-Africanists. Um, yeah.
Thank you, Comrade Shango. Comrade Adebayo.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Conrad Bayo. I hope what we discussed today, will be able to enlighten our viewers.
Comrade Jide.
Good afternoon, comrades. Like has been iterated already, we would like to facilitate these and such discussions going forward, so as to keep ourselves informed as things unfold in our society, so we can understand what's going on and how we navigate from that point.
Okay. Thank you for that brief introduction. And well, we already have a comment coming in, but before we get to that, I would like, in that particular order in which you introduce yourself, to comrades to give their thoughts on the three candidates. What do they think? What do you think about the candidates of the APC, the PDP, and the Labour Party? Because they are the three leading contestants in the presidential election that was conducted 2 weeks ago. So I would like to hear from comrades about what they think about the contestants of the three leading party. So, Commissioner Go, you can go first.
Yeah. Comrade, Inamdi has asked that question, a few questions. I think we'll come to them as we discuss. But interestingly, he has asked that question, what we think about those candidates, and I think from the perspective of us as Pan-Africanists and what they mean, what will be the implication of any of them in power in the struggle against imperialism, really. Um, I think, and that is very straightforward in terms of that question. I think not just the three. I would like to look broader than that, but just look firstly at the three candidates. Um, Before the elections, it was widely understood that people could tell that all the candidates were trying their best to show that they are the best friends of the West, um, and they were going to the so-called Chatham House, making visits to uh, the UK Prime Minister, you know, and that is just their outward appearance that they give us. Then we look at their positions that they put out, the manifesto positions or whatever positions they have spoken about that they will do. And again, it is very clear that they are highly aligned with imperialism. Even the candidate, who was supposed to be the candidate of, shall we say, change, or some people will say hope. I think even of the three, he probably was the most virulently pro-imperialist, actually. um, he's probably the candidate who you would think that would be the best friends of the imperialist. Um, Not that there's anything to tell apart the three of them, and he's the highly neoliberalist candidate, the one who wants to put in place neoliberal policies that will sell off basically anything to the West. So, and that was a contradiction in the sense that he was representing the Labour Party, which is a party of supposedly should be a party of labor and against the pauperization of the working class that imperialism and neoliberalism will bring. Um, but then I think we will discuss more about what has happened in the Labour Party and the idea that the Labour Party represents change and there are all these young people supporting Peter Obi. But just on that, in terms of looking at those three candidates, um, the policies they were going to bring, uh, I think, I mean, you could even look at some recent IMF. Let me just quickly look at it. Somebody shared something which I found very interesting that what the IMF said recently about Nigeria, um, and in terms of what they were considering, what should be done. And you can see that what the IMF suggests is what these three candidates want to do. They urge the authorities to deliver on their commitment to remove fuel subsidies by mid 2023 and to increase well-targeted social spending, which is well-targeted social spending. They speak for, take things away from the masses and then give them palliatives, as they say. Give them something to calm them down. While you steal from them. Strengthening revenue mobilization, expanding tax system, whatever. All these things tax directed at the working class, poor people, not tax at the higher up. So they go on to say rationalizing tax incentives, which is so you increase taxes at the bottom, you rationalize tax incentive. That is, you cut taxes at the top. Um, so that's just some of the things the IMF have been saying, and all the candidates agree with the IMF. So those three candidates. Of course, there were other candidates in the election, notably Showore, who was standing on a socialist platform. Um, yeah. So that's what I'll say for now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think that was a very brilliant submission there. But also, while the top three leading candidates are pro-West, some still think that maybe one of them, the lesser evil peddling is the solution to their problem. So, Comrade Daki, what do you think about that?
I would just have to just broadcast on what Commission has already said. Commission has already, highlights, the basic thing about the three candidates, and like I said, they are just there to just keep continuing the imperialist agenda in Nigeria. And if we go back and check the manifestos of the three candidates, all going towards the liberalism, liberalization and also opening in the Nigerian market, for the capitalist elites. That's just it. And like this, there's not much difference there. People actually, going lesser, it also shows, the level of how, how class has also come to another dynamics, able to bamboozle people. And the Nigerian masses in general, are not that politically conscious, or, or have not actually reached that level of total awareness whereby they can be able to see, through the antics of this elite in general. And per se, because I feel like if the Nigerian class, Nigerian masses, are much more aware about the ideological directions these three candidates are actually going to, then they're actually going to see the threat. Also part of what neocolonialism has done to Africa, it keeps blindfolding the people. The people are not able to come out of that, shackles of lies. And it is also part of what we're actually trying to do. Maybe to bring the right education, make them politically cautious. Because if our people are politically cautious, then the three candidates, who won't have that boldness, or who won't have that courage, to and say they want to come out for president, with their liberal and their what they call imperialistic, agenda. So for us, I also feel like it is for us, be on the left, to able to have like a dialogue with the people, to able to have been able to develop the people's consciousness, because people are only seeing, participating in politics in just electioneering process only. People don't do beyond the electioneering process. People need to, start opening themselves, to actually understand, the contradictions that's happening in Africa. Because, when you look at the contradictions, then you understand the role the political elite is actually playing in this country. And when you understand that, then you realize that nobody can actually come from that political class and try to come as the savior of the people, because that class already has an interest that is attached, to the capitalist system in general, that is attached, to the imperialist system in general. So there is no savior there. It's just going to be a caricature thing, like we always say in the past, checking the past election in the country when people come out as saviors, or when you look at their antecedents, things that they've actually been doing, with them being in government, or with the political or the economical stand that they hold. Then you realize that these people are not for the people. The people are just there to also, do what they know how to do best, lie to people, and be the intermediary of the global capitalist system in general. So that's my view for now.
Yeah, thank you, Komibar, for that wonderful submission there. Yes, a lot of our people still hold illusions in, the established member of the establishments coming to save them from this horror that they've been, you know, that has been created by the establishment itself, by the system in place. So, just to buttress more on that, I would like to, because despite the fact that people still thought that, some of the electorate thought that the lesser evil you know, would be the one to, save them from the horrors of the system. You know, we saw that during the presidential election there was a low voters turnout, at least 25%, if not the lowest, since election has been conducted in Nigeria. So, Comrade Jide, what do you think about about that number? Do you think the people fell for the the lesser evil peddling? What do you think about that? Do you think what's the reaction to that? I mean, the belief by some of the electorate that the lesser devil is the one who's going to save them from the horrors of the system.
Yes, as was just iterated before me, it's the lack of understanding that, or rather, the general lack of consciousness that we have by our lack of education or miseducation in general, that we fall for such false truisms, as I would like to say, like the lesser evil. By what yardstick do we determine what is lesser of these evils? Anyway, in practice, it's really just who can ride on the false populism, or who puts in the most effort to appeal to, or maybe even echo some of our grievances. But we do not, we collectively don't really understand the historical context, or even the class character of these people, and what they stand for. Not like let's have, like, we, the only way that we can be represented, or I don't even like that word that much, or at least impose our will, I would say, because we are in an antagonistic relationship with the ruling class, is through radical change of the system. It's not even possible for us to fundamentally improve our situations with the system in the first place. And as for the low voter turnout, you see, this voter apathy is one of the notable characteristics of the bourgeois democracy, because we like I've hinted for, we need to be conscious of the democracy for who, for which class, what the things we require, like education, healthcare, uh, electricity. It's not even on the ballot in the first place. So what exactly are we voting for? Whichever manager of the elite gets to oppress us. And power is something, even if you can't really articulate it, you will feel it. Most people understand, even if they can't express it probably, but they do understand that this thing is it's a farce, it's a charade. So I mean, whoever gets in there, they know they will be further disenfranchised anyway.
Yes, exactly. I think that just speak to you that who democracy for who, and the fact that the education system in our country it's kind of make the electorate pander towards some these reactionary element posing as a messiah, you know, during elections. So I think you did justice to that, and you spoke well about why there was a low turnout during the election, and their reaction to the lesser evil, the the candidate of the Labour Party. But anyway, I'll go to the comment section now. There's a question from Tumi Adulujo, and I think that's for Commission Go. I don't know if Commission Go can see that on screen. I'm going to put it on screen. I said, do you think the IMF policies mentioned by Commission Go are an attempt to further drive down the cost of labor in Nigeria to be exploited by imperialist forces as there more to those policies? Commissioner, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, this is age-old IMF and World Bank imperialism that Nigeria has been suffering very brutally, I think, since the late 70s, when these policies came into to strong effect, and across the continent, of course. the early 80s, we had the structural adjustment program. And they've got this noose around our neck. We can't, they do not want us um, to consider a way, as the question said, that we must keep our labor down, but also our resources must be available. So we should be resource extractors. We shouldn't focus on anything else because any economy, the important thing is to industrialize, to move away from, as they say, resource dependence. And this election was run on this issue about let's move to production away from consumption. But these are just mere words that the um people use just to confuse people. There was a favorite words of Obi, who wants to follow these imperialist policies to the letter. So if you are ready to follow those policies, you better forget about production, because essentially it is when you start to do all these things. I mean, of course, because if we talk about labor, yes, if you have low labor, like for example, China industrialized on the basis that it had cheap labor, right, compared to the West. So you could say that you could have cheap labor and still have an idea of industrialized. So I think it is not just about labor; it is about that access to resources, to make sure that that is our focus, that we don't escape that trap. You know, so we will not spend on education. We will not spend on the areas that will industrialize us. We would rather cut social spending on those areas, and privatize, make sure the vast majority are not going to have access to that. And so we cannot develop the same template that has been used by every other country to reach a level of industrialization, even the United States, the so-called socialist policies. We would not be able to do those things. So it is what they call comparative advantage. They say that your comparative advantage is maybe for us in Africa is to provide resources. And whatever for example, and I mean it goes beyond this. They get involved in enhancing terrorism because they want resources. Everything the West does, because we should understand the West is doing things in its interest. People in the IMF are not going to do things for our own interest. In the area of labor, I mean, there's so much to talk about there. Labor has been completely, increasingly now, we just have casualized labor without any protection, labor, without any benefits. People are just working for essentially nothing. And I think, yes, this kind of scenario is what the capitalists want to continue, and which all their policies essentially show that's what they want. So yeah, so I don't know, not to say much on that, but the simple thing is all three candidates believe in this, but the one that believed in it religiously was falling in love with the one that was in the Labour Party. So, well, him and the other one, Atiku, to be honest, not to sound as if, because some candidates try to play on this. Let us have some social welfare net. Let us not go too far. But some of them really want to push it to an extreme as much as possible. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Go, for that. That was a brilliant submission. And talking about the casualization of workers, I would encourage our viewers to search on our page. We did a session with um, one of the leader of the informal workers workers in Nigeria, Film Comrade Gbenga Komolafe. The session is on our page here on YouTube and also on our Facebook. So you can search for it. You talk more about the casualization of work and how workers' rights are being encroached on. So, I just wanted to stay on the because in fact the online space as I think it has favored and the so-called lesser evil. That's Peter Obi of the Labour Party. Comrade IQ, can you please touch on what do you think of his candidacy and how does it what telling effect does it have on the press on election in Nigeria? Because A lot of our people believe that he is the savior, but he has been denied. I mean, the savior has been denied, um, 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 as his mandate has been denied. In fact, they say it's a popular mandate, and that is the mandate of the people. So, what do you think about that? I would like to view on that.
Okay. Firstly, my own perspective on that would be like I feel on the internet or probably let me say on Twitter generally, where some people actually said Peter Obi is the president of Twitter or probably the president of social media because of the large number of propaganda being pushed out by the so-called people on his team, and that actually shows the level um um of of propaganda in this country. Because sometimes when I go through all those things, we talked about Peter Obi, and people are not trying to just cross check um, based on statistics, based on facts, based on data. People just try to just glorify people and try to make them feel as if they are the ones that are going to save this country. But things are not being brought out. Let's try to bring about the decadence of our system. Let's talk about the health sector, for instance. Let's talk about the educational sector. Those things that we should put on social media. It should be like um, 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 a public discourse for those who are representing the Kitabi itself. Okay, what are your policies? In able to tackle these things. For instance, now we already see how the so-called government in charge, or let me say probably the ruling class in general, are actually trying to fight public education in this country. Last year, students went on strike, you know, for 8 months, and which was actually close to the presidential election, and nothing was being discussed was that in case if something might happen in the future that would actually lead to a long strike like that, what are the government's policies will be able to tackle, derailment of education in this country? Those are the kind of things we should push forward. Also matter arising on the origin right now is on the issue of climate change and stuff like that. And Nigeria being what they call one of the um, large producer of oil. When you go towards the region where oil is being produced, you see how the marine life in general is being polluted. People are being killed from the negligence of the so-called oil companies. So those are key issues that needs to be put in the public space. That needs to be debated. What are the way forward about all these things, not just thinking about people or thinking about someone who's going to eradicate things. You want to eradicate things and you're not actually showing us the way forward on how to do all these things. You just bamboozle us. You try to give references on countries, countries that are actually on the path of socialism. Are you going toward that or are you going towards that line socialism? And you can't do two things at once. You can't speak for the capitalist class and also you want to speak for on social welfare because capital you always override human welfare. And one thing about this candidate is about how we can be able to maximize investments, how we can be able to make profit. And and like Market Parati always said, um, um, much wealth lies much to great poverty. So the more you extend the wealth within the hand of the few, the more you spread, poverty. So those are the key things we should be discussing. What are the way forward? We're having a transportation issue in this country. What are your plans in able to achieve all those things? So they just want to put things in the hands of the private, sector, and private sector actually, does not actually take anything, you know, in able to solve problems. What they care about is about making profit. And when we talk about the past occurrences or let me say the intervention of private sector in able to solve social problems in this country, we see that they are not able to do anything significant rather than how they can probably make money. Okay, the issue of the power sector being privatized in this country, are that able to improve how people enjoy 24 hours electricity in this country. But these people actually are making a lot of enormous profit. They're making a lot of profit and they're not giving out the services people need or people you know need to survive their daily activities. So for me, on Peter Obi, I don't actually for me I don't actually believe in someone is going to save us. Like someone is going to come from heaven is going to say, well, my own personal belief, which shows that if the people, are well politically conscious and well, educated about the so-called um, demographic of how global capitalism and how political economy shapes, the contradiction of this country, then by themselves, they feel like it will be on them to be able to do their own impact in able to develop this country. Nobody's going to come here and save us. So at this point, we don't even need individuals. We need people, who are going to, dedicate their time in how we can be able to change the society at large. It's not going to be in the hand of any individuals. And if you, check, countries that are able to move, rapidly in terms of development, let's talk about China. China didn't have this, what's it called, this messiah's syndrome that someone's going to change the country. You realize that, no, for change to come, it's going to come from the larger society as a whole. So we need to have a social plan or a plan whereby it will be able to develop the people's consciousness on the way forward and how to develop our country. Now, China people started the Cultural Revolution, which as able to improve, the living standard of the people. So what is the social plan, for us to be able to attain that? Because if so-called data or bill is giving references to China, this, China that, China is doing this, China is doing that, as he, able to tell the people correctly that that is, the effect of socialist policies that's able to make China develop, so those are the kind of dialogue we should be having with our people. How we can be able to, expose them to the contradiction of, the economic in general. Unlike Comrade Congo said, development can't come without industrialization. And the world demographic itself has put the global south in general to always produce labor and natural resources. And anytime a country from the global south is trying to industrialize, then you see these big guys coming in, you know, with their mercenaries. We see what they did in Libya, how they devastated Libya, and we still see, how they try to use, economic policies, to strangle some countries that are actually trying to do better for themselves. Look at Cuba right there, look at Nicaragua right there, look at Venezuela right there. Those are the economic policies, that are strangling them. So, for Cuba to be able to survive, the economic sanctions on them, that shows that people are actually highly politically conscious of what is happening. So those are, we need to start doing things that are happening in other socialist, you know, third world countries, for us to move forward. So those are the critical things we need to be putting out to our audience. And as part of, what we stand for as MOP and as MAE, we feel like, for change to come, we need to change how our people are thinking. We need to change, how people see things in general. Because, the so-called the American dreams are also, being sold to the Africans. Like, when you work hard, there's a reward for you. You may probably be the next billionaire. But all those things are, antics of, liberalism to be able to confuse the people, and change won't come on that perspective, or won't come on that, on that path. So for us, we want to feel like we need to re-strategize our society. When we change the value system of our society, then we can actually see the kind of changes that we want. And that is my contribution.
I was smiling because you were giving an example of Cuba and the kind of people's economic policies that are being put in place there. And I remember that all of the leading candidates, representing the top parties, whenever they want to make reference, they usually talk about the West. In fact, I think Vitaobi loves Bangladesh so much. I need to research Bangladesh. I don't know why he talks about Bangladesh so much. But the point.
Like you said earlier about labor exploitation. When you go to Bangladesh, that's one of the biggest home of labor exploitation. Majority of the so-called designers, what's it called, fashion designers, companies, that's where they go to exploit people. When you have companies like Nike, when you have companies like Adidas, they go to Bangladesh, they go to Taiwan to exploit this labor. So you find it more there. So
You see, because I don't understand the law for Bangladesh. But anyway, these people, I think they actually believe that they're the Messiah. We have the electorate chosen Messiah, that's Peter Obi. And we also have the one who also believe that he is the Messiah, that's Atiku of the PDP. And one funny thing about both of them is that when the election result was announced, both of them wept. And if you recall in the Bible, they said Jesus wept. So they believe they are the Messiah, and that's why they wept, representing that Messiah representation. So, Komejide, you know, with that, and because the election, it also, touches on the role ethnicity played, in voters' decisions during the election, both ethnicity and religion. And especially the APC, which is the leading, the incumbent party in power, they fielded a Muslim ticket, which didn't sit well with some of the Christian citizens in the country. And I think some of the other parties leverage on that. So, what do you think? How did that impact the election?
Well, this the ethnic line is one of the many strategies, unfortunately, extremely successful ways they've found to confuse us, manipulate and misdirect our anger and our energy. Because Nigeria, in my opinion, is a prison house of nations. And as someone who I'm not too fond of called it a mere geographical expression. I mean, I'm not saying he's right, but I'm not saying he's wrong either. So these many, at some point in history, sovereign people were came under the heel of first slavery, then colonization, and now neocolonization. The feeling the brunt of the contradictions that would arise from that. It's a good way to make sure we do not come close to the truth, so as to threaten business as usual. So, okay, this is something we have a visceral connection to. What ethnicity am I from? Oh, I'm Yoruba. I'm Ibadis, and they have us think it's this perfectly coherent, monolithic, and static thing. So, okay, they might maybe invent a story, or maybe point to one of the bourgeoisie that has this is different to ours. I say, oh, is him doing this is the cause of your suffering over here, ignoring the ones just in your our own backyard doing the same thing, usually in cooperation with them, because whether be it any religion or what have you, these things either do not either don't divide the ruling class, or it's not a deal breaker for them, because their class interest underscores all their relationships. They are class conscious. We are not, which is why we get strong upon this thing. Oh, it's an evil problem, and much more often than not, this this anger is directed to the poor working class or the peasants or other people, not necessarily people that have much agency or much power to direct how policy is drafted or moved. It's actually quite frustrating how people with that we are aware, like people that share this, maybe say thing about whatever, they'll say, oh, this is it's a headsman problem, or lack of there's an evil problem, but we know. But we know they are also in chaos of sin, because, like I've said before, we really need this class consciousness. Like this thing cannot be holistically understood. Without this, we need to see. That really help us contextualize how many of these things happen, how the economics and the politics at play even affect us in our small day-to-day that had been previously invisible to us. And as for how it might, that also leads into what about that, because the people of Igbo extraction in Nigeria also, at least in the mainstream, also feel especially slighted, be it militarily or narratively as well. And for the first time in what's been a while, honestly, they see someone that they think they have something in common with but for reasons I've highlighted previously, it's actually a superficial thing. I mean, in my own opinion, it's not that on its own. It does not amount to anything. But because they have been led to believe in this system being salvageable, or they think, okay, if he's there, that means, and they experience the thing vicariously through him. I mean, it's not unique to them. It's something we all have an issue with. So, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. If he wins, it's a victory for us. But he's only a friend of his peers, friend, or let me never say friend, is only an ally of people in the ruling class or people with privileged relationship with the state. Because if he wins, it's not really going to spell any trouble for, say, another elite. If that wins, that it's not going to disturb his business. Him losing this election is not going to have any negative financial repercussions for himself. We are the ones. We are the ones that will be the shock absorbers of this anyway. So until we develop that class culture, and it's a very deliberate thing too, because we would know, because our grievances are legitimate. We have just been made unable to direct it constructively. Because once we know and understand who the culprits are, it's game over for them. At least we would, because we are in a class war. Whether they realize it, we do not. We have a very tremendous advantage in numbers, and we also have a righteous cause. They lack either of these things, so we have to be confused, malleable, miseducated, weak, and vulnerable for them to be able to, for a nominal minority to be able to kick around like this, even without us knowing most of the time. So that's my own take on that.
Yeah, that pretty much speak to it. This comment has been, sitting here, and I think it's directed at Comrade Adebayo. So, Comrade Adebayo, I will put it on the screen, and you can just respond to it in 2 minutes, please. So it's from Comrade, from Tumi Aduloju. He said, Comrade Adebayo, do you think Nigeria is capable of fending off imperialist forces long enough to develop our productive forces, or do we have to ally ourselves with other African nations or China? Are we capable of standing alone against the West? So Comrade Adebayo, that's for you, please, because of our time. Just 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. My response to that would be like, Nigeria has almost 2 billion people, and the
Comrade Adebayo, are you there? Can others hear him? Okay, well, I suspected we could experience that, he was about to talk about the West. Okay, he's back.
Hello, can I
Yes, go
come
ahead,
please?
please.
Can I come back, please? I have issue with you.
The West are
Like
angry
I
with
said,
you.
Nigerian house almost 200 million people. You said what?
I said they have to cut you off. The West are angry with
Can I
you.
go? Like I said, Nigerian house, almost 200 million people, and its economy is so large to the extent that it's influenced other African countries. for Nigeria to work towards a socialist path, will actually be great, and to actually motivate other countries to also work toward that aspect as well. And a lot of um, people are looking towards Nigeria because as of today, even on the capitalist side, Nigeria is one of their most important place where they can actually penetrate. So, for us, Nigeria is very important, in the total liberation of the country. But we also realize that Nigeria cannot do it all alone, and Nigeria is not can't be isolated without not having a relationship with the outside world, and also it needs to have a relationship within the continent. And like we said, even the so-called Western powers, that we are up against, they have their own bloc, their own unions whereby they fight for their own interests. So if Nigeria is actually working towards that part of socialism, we also buy to we also see the idea that other countries to buy to that ideology too as well. So we have to interact with all those countries, and see how we can be able to develop among each other. And countries like China too, is also playing a bigger role in history right now. Whereby power is going to be taken away from the West, and we are going to have like a bipolar world whereby power is being shared. As at that, we see the role China is actually playing, and there are a lot of relations that people are actually seeing China as a capitalist country. China is doing this, China is doing that. For me, I'm not trying to justify what China is doing, but I'll try to understand, the role China is playing, being able to reduce the power and the influence of the West in general, and the power of these so-called Western oligarchs, and China as one way, as able to create an alternative, to African countries, also to the, to other global South countries as well. And when we check about the relationship between China and third world countries, we see that there is a win-win, approach, not like the way the West used to come with their forces and they want to take over the whole interest and not even keep anything for the people aside for the support people that are vying to their own interest in government. Like we see, the improvements of what China has done in Africa. Look at Ethiopia, they're actually building one of the power plants, that will able to help the development of that economy. And also in Nigeria, here, we also see their influence, in able to help with the infrastructural development. We see how they were able to help with the railway um, projects and also some other things. And also we see in what's it called? I can't remember the name of this country. I can't remember they're building one of the or one port there that we're able to help trade um, trade dealings within that area and the world in general. So for me, looking at the question, what is the way forward? You know, you know, being able to fight, these imperialists and able to develop Africa, but Nigeria as a whole. When you check about, you know, after Nigeria gained independence and the so-called people they were being given power, they were actually seeing development, or they were actually seeing that let's develop Africa in the line of the West. They were not following a decolonized agenda in order to develop Africa. So they were looking towards, let's have the skyscrapers, let's have all those fancy buildings as a form of development. So, they are only developing, towards the capitalist growth. But when you check, development as a whole, development that ties, to the advancement of the people, you see how degraded that we are in terms of that. When you check the social service, like I said earlier, the health sector, the educational sector, you see, how slow we are. But when you talk about, capitalist investments in Africa or even Nigeria as a whole, you see how it's growing on a faster pace. How international interpretation of capital is going ground in Africa because Africa is a safe landing, for the bourgeois capitalists. So for us, we need to change, the direction of development in our country. So development shouldn't be about fancy things, driving the latest cars, putting Eiffel Tower in Lagos or whatsoever. Development should be how we can able to create social services that are tied to the materialist development of the people. So and when you check, the material development of the people, you look at socialist states and you see, how they were able to protect development to their own understanding. When you look at Cuba today, when you go to Cuba, you don't see prostitution like the way you see it in the West. You don't see, homelessness the way you see it in the West. So there's no development in a different part that is quite important, to the material development of the people. So that is what we are all about. So the development, for Africa, or the development of global South countries have to go in a diversional way, of, contrary to the development of capitalist system or the capitalist order. So for us to develop, as a continent, you know, we need to, find our way away from the imperialist settings. And like you said earlier, it's
Comrade
always
Adebayo,
boundary. People need to understand this. There's a boundary. Yeah,
yeah, Comrade Adebayo, just to, in 1 minute, please, in 1 minute, he's
hello.
asking that, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's asking that,
yeah.
um, do you think Nigeria is capable of fending off imperialist forces long enough to develop our productive forces, or do we have to ally ourselves with other African nations or China? So, what do you think? Because right now,
Like
wait,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
in
like I
Africa,
said, yeah,
the imperialist speak, at the helm of governors in the different countries in Africa. So, do you think that we should ally with those
yeah.
liberal elements, or we should align with an international government like China, for example? I think that's what it has. So, in under 1 minute, please, can you just speak to that, because we like to go to the next question.
Yeah, like I said earlier, Nigeria can actually stand alone. Have, relationship or electoral relationship with other countries that fights with the agenda, of what we stand for or what we need to do in order to fight the imperialist power. So, like, we have to make friends, in order to survive fighting, imperialists in general, because imperialism as a whole, it's an international thing. So if we can maybe defect them, nationally within our country, for us, to able to strive, for us to strive as a country, we still need international allies. So we will have to like partner with all these countries that are also trying to break, the shackles of imperialism in their countries. I hope you can be able to understand that. We see countries like China, doing so. We see countries like Cuba doing so. Nicaragua are the countries we have to align with. And like, towards the now era, I think, what's it called, the um, global South country fight those clique or the imperialist bloc. So things like that have to come into play too as well. So Nigeria alone can fight imperialism. Nigeria alone can even survive, in fighting imperialism, because as a whole we understand that, the remnants, of capitalism is not only fighting, those holding the realm of affairs in the country.
Well, I think we lost Comrade that kid there. Well, the West is not so happy with some of the things he's saying, but we have to proceed. So, okay, I think we've already covered enough on the top three candidates, because another thing is that what the mainstream media does is that they try to isolate the other candidates who have people's manifesto and contesting under the platform of under a socialist platform. So, Comrade Shango, could you speak to because you mentioned earlier that there is another candidate, that is the candidate of the All African Congress, if I'm correct. I don't know if that's the AAC candidate, Omar Elisha, who is contesting under a socialist platform. Could you, you know, talk a little bit about his candidacy and the party represent and the alternatives it present during the presidential election?
Yeah, I would I would say, and I would say in terms of going forward, I think I would like to speak to that more in the terms of what have been the negatives of this election and what can be different. Um, so, like we analyzed, the three candidates have neoliberalist, pro-imperialist agendas, and the party of AS is the only one that stood on the socialist agenda. And also, then we now look at the elections beyond that as an agenda of what can offer, something for the Nigerian masses in the sense of genuine development. They think that will bring development, for this country. Fair living wages, for example, against the privatization of assets, ensuring that our resources are for us. So all this idea that we have to get rid of some so-called fuel subsidy, which is something that belongs to us, but they're saying they are subsidizing it back to us, all these kind of crazy ideas. So something that offers an alternative. Um, and but also beyond that, now this election, because I do want to speak on the issue of the ethnic divisions that, Comrade Jide spoke about quite well earlier on, is that, if you look at the character of people like Shure and AAC, they're more of people who have been able to speak to a wide diversity of people. And if they had had the popularity, we would likely had not seen, or if we were not seeing, the actions of the state in trying to diminish what is on offer from the left, we would see a different type of politics. This ethnic politics play in because this is how the elites wanted to play. And when you now come in within that prism of evil, um, so you have a lesser evil, someone who is a member of the elite, and you now present them to the Nigerian masses. I don't think you are going to ever be able to escape the trap of ethnic divisions, because if you are going to present a lesser evil to somebody and say this is an evil person, but choose him, the person might probably just say, well, actually, I just prefer the evil that is my brother, or the evil that is my sister, the evil that I am familiar with, the evil that, that is in my backyard, And then we also there was a lot of playing on these divisions, I'm Christian, you're Muslim, and all that, rather than speaking to policies, rather than speaking to things actually that can unite Nigerians in basis of their class exploitation as a whole. And I think from what I've seen about Shure and how he has related to the national question and things like that, if there had been a fair chance of someone from like that contesting, we would have been able to break through this ethnic barrier. But I think, like I said, it's about what kind of politics are people Pan-Africanist or socialist, Pan-Africanist socialists to think about going forward. And it is really one is that people need a party that speaks that um I have to say I'm a member of MOP. I'm a member of the different political party from Shure's AAC, and I do believe that the strategy of MOP to actually build a party that belongs to the masses, a party that the masses have a say in, that is accountable, that's going to hold leaders accountable at all levels, you know, from bottom to top, from the local government upwards, is one start. It also speaks to I don't might have to tackle the question of rigging and how we will look at elections going forward. When we come to that, we'll speak more on that. But is that we do need a different type of party. We've had too much of parties that represent the parties of the elites, who the masses have no say. So they choose these parties based on primordial, sentiments. My someone from my ethnicity, or someone from my religion, and nobody chooses because there's nothing on the table. And at least in this election, we saw there was something on the table, but in the middle of all this, uh, the big powers that be, struggling, masses were not able to actually hear or follow that other option that was there. But I think there's a possibility of going forward.
Yeah. Comrade Shango, just to continue on that, because you mentioned something about the national question, which I think is important, and why some section of the um, electorate thinks that it's the time for somebody from the southeast, to become president. Do you think that the candidate of the Labour Party represents a good? I mean, is a good representation of what national question should represent? Given that the Igbos have not been allowed to, you know, or haven't been considered, to be the president of the country, given the history of Nigeria, the civil war, and the mistrust from some of the ruling elites. Do you think Peter Obi represented is a good representation of the Igbo, in this election?
Yeah, well, good question. I have to laugh because there are people that certainly believe that that is how they solve the national question, by putting somebody in power from a different nationality. And so we do turn by turn. You you put the Igbo today, you put the. Meanwhile, the masses will continue to suffer from every nationality because the actual structure is faulty. It's not an issue about certain individuals that you put into place. Um, the structure is faulty, and by that I don't just mean, as people who talk about restructuring, they tend to talk about restructuring in terms of the nation state that was handed over to Nigeria, the geographical expression that was handed over to Nigeria by the imperialists when they left. So we should structure it, if, you know, but that kind of structure is not what I'm talking about. It's a structure about ownership of the actual majority of people, the class. Whether you restructure Nigeria into different domains in which the elites are still the owners, it is simply a division among the elites. And in this case, sharing presidency and things like that doesn't change anything. The constant the way in which some parts of Nigeria are exploited for their resources, will continue to be, um and all that. So though I don't, at the same time, there's certainly merit in the case that one part of the country should not feel excluded, from ruling. But I think we have gone past that point. We have gone past the point of patching up these faults in the Nigerian state to actually needing to do something radical. I always say this: you can't put a bandage on a cancer, you can't cure malaria with paracetamol, and you certainly can't solve the Nigerian question. That is why, of course, I'm referring again back to Shore. That the Nigerian question is a question now of revolution, of revolutionary change. It's not a question of whether or not, because they finish putting in, this was certainly, what was it, the candidate of Labour, APC, Emilio Con, it's my turn. And this was a factor at play among the elites, because I believe that so segment of the elite, the northern elite, decided to support that candidate because they say, well, let us do like we are pushing it to that side. So then when they will now push it, and so people play all these power games. So if now they could have just decided to say, let us play this game, let us give it to this guy. So next time, because it depends on who is going to give you the votes to win an election. Um, and so we will end up back in square one. They will now play these games round and round and meanwhile they will continue to share it. So the national question cannot be solved in any way. I find it ridiculous that people like, and I will mention names like Dele Farrow to me, who says he wants a constitutional change, a radical change. Nigeria needs revolution. Didn't he say that? He's, he's now he's now supporting a candidate because of it's the turn of the Igbos. That is not thinking about the long term change that Nigeria requires, and it's not just a change in terms of how ethnicities control things, but actually taking power back to the people. That's what we need. We need at all levels that the people should be able to have ownership and keep their leaders accountable, not to have ethnic lords who will still lord it over people. So, and I think that speaks to the whole ethnic divisions that we have seen in this election. It was not a solution because I think I don't know, maybe we'll come to that, but we've seen this saying that this candidate is Igbo and everybody else is bad. You must elect this candidate. They actually, and this candidate is Christian. They actually lead some other sides to now choose their own candidate, and then it intensifies the whole ethnic divisions. So doing this, it doesn't work. It is part of what has intensified the ethnic divisions in this election, and it will continue to do so. We see that in Lagos State. I don't just want to talk about that right now, but anyway, I'll stop there.
No. I was going to, I meant to, push that, to you because I think I want that to go around, just for you to um, finish on that topic. That in Lagos, we've seen that ethnicity has been so is a very is what has been peddled right now. It's being peddled right now that someone someone who's not from Lagos cannot contest in Lagos, and some are even questioning the authenticity of the origin of one of the candidates. So I wanted to speak on that as well. While after you, then take Comrade Adebayo and Comrade Jide also, to hear their thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we are having we had the national election, and it was very ethnically and religiously divided. So people from, not very, because I think you can say that there are people from certain regions like Lagos where there was this crossing between the ethnicity and the religion. So Yoruba Christians, for example, to an extent, could vote for the Christian candidate who was from another ethnicity, but the people from the Muslim North voted for the Muslim North candidates, and so we had that. It was very clear, and it was disturbing. I have to say, it was disturbing. Apart from the region, that was disturbing. Then we come to Lagos, which is a cosmopolitan city, which people from all nationalities are in, and of course, politicians is their game. They must do divide and rule. They must find ways in which to, you know. So they did this, but I also find the way that I find myself in an odd position, that I don't like the ruling party in Lagos. I don't like the uh, ethnic games they are playing. And I think that we need candidates that can bring people of all nationalities together, on policies that, for the working class, for the majority of the people. But we end up with, because they say it is a question of whose land is this, no man's land. We end up with a candidate whose father is an elitist from some, I don't know, what's it called? Is it a Sao or something? Anyway, one of these people who were when Nigeria, was a colony, they were the very, very high elite, who were working with the imperialists very well, you know, and they're part of the people and then he comes from that line. He's a son of, and he's proud of it. I mean, he says it's a Lagosian. So that is the Lagosian that he is, the Lagosian of the elite who were, who used the worked with the colonialists to keep us down, or what, and they say they are wealthy landowners. Are you a wealthy landowner in Lagos if there's something wrong with your record? And funny enough, in all this talk about he has an Igbo mother, has an Igbo name. The things that certainly I think is wrong to attack him on those things. But when I heard him speak, um, he couldn't speak properly like a Lagos person. It doesn't matter whether it's your Yoruba or your Igbo, whatever. You should speak as a Lagosian. He couldn't speak, and they say it's because he's been out of the country for 27 years. So I thought we're really in trouble in the sense that we really do need to, tackle this ethnic question. The person that all this is revolving around is somebody that I can't is also is one of those that we say, and Lagos cannot belong to you. It's not one of the elites. You are not one of the people. To all intents and purposes, to me, he's a foreigner, and he doesn't, he's not. I don't trust him to take care of the interest of the masses. I've heard him speak on his ideological positions and so on. Before he joined the Labour Party, he's an opportunist who used to be in the PDP. He has this very pro-capitalist views, and I heard him speak and saying that he doesn't agree with the Labour Party position at all, but he's in the Labour Party. So I find it odd that this is the situation, but of course, we do have to condemn this ethnic electioneering that is going on in Lagos. We do say yes, that candidate, no, nobody should be attacked because of their nationality. That people who are Igbo have every right to be in Lagos, to vote in Lagos, and it doesn't change anything about the indigenship, of Lagos. But at the end of the day, we will keep on having these ethnic divisions because we don't actually have candidates that appeal to the working people that can break through this thing that the ruling elites do in terms of being able to say that the other candidate has nothing to offer. So you might as well support on the basis of your ethnicity. This is the same reasoning that you can see that people have collected money to vote for so long because people are giving candidates that are not different from each other. And so people feel, well, I might as well collect money from one and vote. So we do actually need a party that is of the people, that can actually push through and to push through to break, to start to break away at these ethnic divisions.
That was a very elaborate one there. I speak to the chauvinism that comes with the ethnic question. That has been the bane of the you know has been the instrument that has been used, to disqualify some candidates. And I think the elites, they love doing that because whenever this comes up, they see it as an avenue to divide and you know to divide the people and create some ethnic friction um, amongst the people. So, Comrade Jide, you've been quiet for a while because we haven't moved the mic to you. So, I'd like to hear, what do you think about that? Like, what are your thoughts on it? I know Comrade Shanga has already, touched on a lot of the reaction that is surrounding the question that was asked. So, but I want you to also, include in your submission that, I mean, what you think about the rigging that has accompanied the election process, during the presidential election as well, and how ethnicity also, played a role in all of that. So, over to you, Comrade.
Yes, because I mean, not sound like a broken record because these are not single issue problems that exist in isolation of one another. The rigging process is nothing is nothing alien to this system anyway. It's inherently corrupt. I mean, that's not a coincidence. It's a feature, not a bug. It's a landmark characteristic. Like I said before, this ethnic is anything. It's something. most people have a visceral or personal connection, or it might be what it might be the way they perceive themselves in the world, and perceive the world perceive the world itself, English. So it's a core part of their identity. Another thing, because some lessons I think we can draw from that is that we never actually successfully decolonized ourselves, our country, our institutions, our processes, even this electioneering. Like, what does this election mean for people, subjects in a state that continuously precludes itself from listening to us, or respecting our wishes, concerns, addressing our grievances? I mean, it makes it painfully obvious. I mean, it's very crude in its manifestation in Nigeria. It makes it painfully obvious that we are just subjects. I mean, what have we not been called or classified as inconsequential, and some things I don't even think I can say here. Even there's no one thing I'd like to highlight, that there's no liberation struggle that occurred on the African continent, really anywhere in the world, in the last, at least in recent history, that didn't have a socialist character, and that is important because these things are historically determined. Because you cannot use the offspring of a system that turned you to the property of another person. That's what it's designed to do, and that's what it will continue to do unperturbed. You have to be antithetical to that, because the former, they both answer a fundamental question, but quite differently. The former is okay. I mean, who would own and control the means of production? The former says, okay, a few people, privileged few, a cabal, can do whatever they want, or will this be a democratic thing that everybody has equal and just say? Because we also should be careful about the way we use language as well, because that informs how we think about things as well. Even if it doesn't occur to us, we shouldn't so easily concede democracy to this nonsense they are doing, because this is something I think can speak to anybody if they actually sit down and think about it. It's not. We don't really believe it's a democratic process, in spite of anything. Even that had been highlighted here was the media hype of this past presidential election. I mean, we still had record low turnouts. I mean, to walk all that big talk, you still could not. That was just wasted energy. I
Of
mean,
course,
even
because
yeah.
throughout the campaign, except for the candidates of the AAC or Moyele, they left out completely class analysis, from the whole discussion and engagement with the people, because they want to further, keep the people in the dark. They don't want them to know which class they represent. Just like the so-called lesser evil, the Messiah. Everybody believes that he's here to represent or change. Meanwhile, not looking at his manifesto and what he represents. So that is a big void, in the conversation. So Comrade Adebayo, I want you to. What do you think? Going forward, what do you think can be? What suggestions do you have? About the election what can be done differently to curb rigging, and the question of ethnicity. How do you think Pan-Africanists should respond to that? Because a lot of people, believes that we should be careful on how we, try to detach people from their roots. Like for example, I'm a Yoruba person, and someone will tell me, "Oh, you don't be Yoruba, be Nigerian." You're a Nigerian. You're a Nigerian. Don't be a Yoruba person. And how do you think we should respond to that? Why we respect the origins of the different ethnic nationality that forms Nigeria. Just tell me your thoughts about that. What do you think, from a Pan-Africanist perspective? What do you think should be our response, and how do you think rigging can be copped, going forward?
Let me first talk about my own contribution to the whole Nigerian thing. Sometimes bourgeois democracy always have its own derailments in able to polarize the people when it comes to electoral process. And this is very synonymous to everywhere in the world, even in the so-called metropoles. We see how people use racism, as their basis, of recruiting people. Even what's it called in England, we see how power was being taken from the progressive left, or power, was actually being stopped, for progressive left to take over power, on the issue of anti-Semitism, that was being levied on Jeremy Corbyn and his members. So also in Nigeria too, it's quite similar. When you see this so-called ruling class just want to just put the divisions among the working class, or the working masses. So, and also on the issue of the rigging, I always tell people that even before we went to the ballot, election has already started. Rigging has already started even before going to the ballot, because if you check the whole electioneering process, you see that it has able to annihilate 95% of people out of the process. Check the monetization of the tickets of the presidential um, um, presidential aspirants, for each, for the three political parties, and you see, how big it is. Even the ordinary man can't even afford the tickets. So, from that aspect, I think class line has already come into play, and that is an aspect of reading. So, on the question of how we can able to unify ourselves, away from this ethnicity card and religious card. I feel like our ancient people, or let me say the ancient Africans, are able to solve this problem, because ordinarily, they identify themselves, by their clans, or by their tribes, or by their village, but they also have at the back of their mind that there's a need for collectivity, because the coexistence of mankind, the coexistence of people, you know helps in the development of humanity in general. So you can't actually isolate yourself. So you have to make people understand that the other tribes are there for your own survival. My own tribes are there for other tribes' survival. So there's a collectiveness, you know, for our own survival. Because actually, when you check, let me use Nigeria as a case study. When you check the demographic of how the country is being structured, majority of the food being consumed in the western part of Nigeria is coming from the north. Majority of the goods that pass through the ports, is coming from the west, is going to the north. And also, the eastern part also have its contribution, to development, or to the economic development as a whole. So the collectiveness itself is actually helping, the material survival of ourselves. And also for me, I feel like it is the ideological differences that shows, or that shows, or probably highlights how people act. Because sometimes, when we go back to history, during the early stage of post independence, we see how the so-called progressive left, there were socialist ideology, were able to come among themselves, organize among themselves, regardless of ethnic bigotry or whatsoever, or from the region that you came from. we realized that if in Kano, the Socialist Party was in Kano, and the Kano was a northern region, and that region, you see people from the Yoruba, people from the Igbo origins that are there. No, so even what's it called? When you check, all um, progressive or socialist gatherings in this country, you will see that it has intertwined, the whole ethnicity in general without not having ethnic sentiment or so or whatsoever. Look at the June 12th struggle. You see the people that played the role in it. They are all people from different nationality. You know, so it's about the idea that drives the people. So if the idea of socialism drives the people, the idea of pan drives the people, that means the idea is actually putting the people collectively together to show their importance together. And I'm not saying people cannot claim, where they come from as an identity. I want to claim where I came from as a Yoruba man, but that doesn't mean I have to quit this chauvinist tendency above any other tribe. We have to understand the collectiveness that we live within the collectiveness, and we all need to identify ourselves, by class, by the class we belong, by the class we represent. So that's one thing for me. And also, these so-called leaders that are actually, polarizing the people with these ethnic divisions and religions. And you realize that within their class, they have their own unity. They share the money among themselves, even regardless of them playing this national question card. They still sit among themselves, go to each other's party and stuff like that. So all these so-called backward ideologies or idealism are being put within the masses for them not to come together, for them not to see themselves as a class. So our way forward, is that the Pan-African unity, with the unity of coming together and making us strong. The more we divide ourselves, the more we become vulnerable. So we still have the vulnerabilities, as able to impact us. Our vulnerabilities, as not coming together, become a leverage, for the so-called colonialists to come, in our land, you know, and use that against us and turn each other's battle on each other. So, we should be able to learn from that, historical occurrences, to the way forward that divisions does not have anything to do, in terms of, our development, in terms of becoming stronger as a people. So that's my contribution.
All right, yeah, thank you, Canada. I did buy it about it. Yeah, that was very, very important. And I must say that our time is already past spent. So I would just, in closing, I'll ask permission go to give his final thoughts. Having mentioned all the problems, that comes with the Nigerian election, going forward, what are the thoughts of Pan-Africanism? What struggle is there in creating a system change in Nigeria? So I'd like to hear from this one person
Yeah,
from the
I'll come here.
situation.
I heard you, but just to mention that you are not very clear. But I followed you, but just note that I think something's wrong with your audio or your network.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
okay.
Um, yeah. So, well, I think, yeah, as has been mentioned, it is in the template of the elections that we have, for these riggings and these ethnic divisions to happen. The way the whole thing is set up. After the last elections, there's the fella song that was being shared everywhere, which people only know as Babanla nonsense, because fella was saying Babanla nonsense, about democracy. But which is a shame because people are only listening to 2 minutes of the song that had a lot of lessons in there, and the song is actually called "Teacher Don't Teach Me Nonsense," um, and which is talking about this democracy was was something that was forced on us by the imperialists. Um, and they always have a hand in it, anyway, and whatever. And it's the structure they have put down. This is the result. This is going to be the result of it, basically. Um, and and then there's also the case of, okay, how do you deal with it? How do you change it? This rigging thing, and there's of course the ethnic divisions. The There was this thing called Beavers for this election, that was supposed to stop the rigging, and which was not widely used. And there was a case of, again, if you go to there's another fella song where he talked about soldier go, soldier come, and when you know they try and they do something to make you trick you to think that things are going to change. And Fela says that those of us who know uh, were looking, and those who did not know were happy. Um, so you can't you can't beat the system just imagining just on that. Not saying that there shouldn't be changes to make it difficult to rig, um, but essentially what we are about is to build our popular forces in this country for the for the working class, for the masses, to build the forces to be strong enough, that we can challenge. We can certainly use elections to challenge, but we cannot have any illusions that we can just go there and just everybody has a vote, and things just happen. That a strong movement has to be built, not just relying on the electoral system. For the people to understand that they really have power, for the people not to wait as well for every 4 years before election, which I think this is the thing again that I said, a member of MOP, and there's a thing that Sean Kuti says, who is the pro-tem chair of MOP, that which actually really struck me after the election, you which said, your vote is not your power, because there's this thing everybody thinks that we just have a free and fair voting, just go there and we will change the system, and but your vote is not your power. Your power is your knowledge of your system, and your vote is simply a tool for how you use it. If we understand this imperialist neo-colonialist contraption that we're in, and we can get people to understand and to organize and mobilize, people should not have this. People have too much of this passivity that I just wait, I collect my PVC and I vote. And this is less a lot of those who were, in the Labour Party and for Peter Obi, who, yes, many of them meant well. They really thought that there was a change. They don't understand the system. You just simply thought that you are going to go there, turn up and vote. At the minimum, you should know you are going to be organizing in each locality. You are going to be there, present on the day. You are going to organize after the elections. So that's what I'm saying, is that nobody's going to wait. We're certainly not going to wait for any messiah, somebody, but the masses are going to have to organize, and they're going to have to organize in their localities. They're going to start to use the power they have before elections. They're going to start to demand things of their local governments, of their state governments, and they are going to show their ever presence, so that they can have a coherent strategy to relate with elections. But elections to change the president of Nigeria is not going to change anything, as it has been said. Even if somebody got into Nigeria as is currently structured, let us imagine Shore won the elections, nothing much will have changed. It is the people have to organize, and that is, of course, as Shore said, there needs to be a revolution in this country. There has to be a revolutionary change. There has to be radical change. Even the whole electoral system has to be radically changed. The whole democracy that we have copied and pasted supposedly from somewhere has to be radically changed. But of course, one step at a time, we start to organize, we start to use our power, we start to make sure that it's not waiting for 4 years, and that so that we can actually intervene, and we actually demand. If rigging happens, you should be in a position to demand your rights. But if the left is so weak, if the popular forces are so weak, then there's nothing that can be done. Now, even the candidates of the Labour Party and the PDP, who are going to, because they show themselves to be powerless. And so they say go to court. Everybody says go to court. People know the results of the go to court because um, I'm not going to rule it out. You never know what the elites and powers that be, what games they are playing, and I don't see how much Obi is different from yeah, the others. That they wouldn't suddenly decide to give Obi that thing. But if it happens, just believe that somebody in the elites have decided to tell the courts that this is what they should do. But most likely, since the power, the incumbent is in charge and whatever, they will decide for him. We've seen this so many times in courts. People always think that this courts, sometimes they rule something you think is good, sometimes they rule bad, you know, and people just don't know why are they so inconsistent. Well, they are, let me tell you how consistent they are. They are consistent because the interest of somebody in the elite is what determines what the result of that court case is going to be, and that is the interest of somebody in the elite is also what determines how the elections is going to be. We have to change this thing to be the interest of the masses. The masses have to stop relying. People have to stop relying on external institutions like the voting, like the courts, to understand that they are the ones that have to organize to get power to change things. And for Pan-Africanists, our struggle, because this is about Pan-Africanists, how we think about elections. This is, you know, that our struggle is for a change in Africa, right? It's for Africans to come together, for us to remove the neo-colonialist rulers. Whichever strategies we would need to do that, we are going to see that. We see that, we've had coups in some countries of recent. We've had, and we've had some progressive, what do you say, uh, alliances. There's some actions on the question of imperialism. The people in Africa are certainly getting, you know, more organized, more fed up of imperialism and seeing what to do about it. So our own task here in Nigeria as Pan-Africanists is to find a way to intervene with the masses, build mass work, and get masses to, to their consciousness about the reality about their power in organizing things. I think I spoke too long there, but anyway, that.
Well, insofar as speaking on solutions and what Pan-Africanists will be doing and for regulating the country, I think
Come closer to
we
to your mic. We can't hear you well.
can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I said you are allowed. Insofar as speaking about solutions on how Pan-Africanists can engage in system change, you are allowed to you are allowed to use my time. So, in conclusion, Comrade Jide, what do you think? What do you think should be the role of Pan-Africanists in system change? Having mentioned that ethnicity is a tool that really not used to divide the people, to lead religion as well, and you know, the lead election. So, what do you think the Pan-Africanists should? How should we engage?
I mean, even though I didn't quite hear everything you said because your audio is quite muffled on my end, but I think I followed and got the gist of it. Like, what do I think the task of Pan Africanist is going forward? But as a corollary that has been said, uh, besides just looking at these external institutions that, like I have said before, preclude themselves from answering to us because they were not built for that purpose in the first place. To paraphrase it, they are moderating organs for our oppression. We need to create our own structures, our own institutions, develop our own ideologies, uh, 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 our own values that necessarily contradict the status quo by by prioritizing our own interests, our own needs as well. And a way I said previously that liberation struggles. I mean, there was just about no liberation struggle in recent history that didn't at least have a socialist character. in the African continent, they also had a nationalist character as well, because this problem, this problem of the national question is not something exclusive to Nigeria. This is that's one of the designs or the ramifications of this colonial system as well. That confusion was put in place. I mean, the more disorganized we are, it's much easier to exploit us in that way as well, because we need that's not to say this necessarily it goes against our Pan-Africanist vision as well, but I'm of the opinion that before we can even have maybe build something with someone else, or even have solidarity, at least where we are earnestly actually talking to them like they are in control of themselves. I mean, this presumes that they have the sovereignty to do that, so that such a unity can be legitimate in the first place. I mean, because it has to be on a political level, it has to be on an economic level, even a militaristic level. To be honest, because that's not really something we can shy away from. The way we don't necessarily train our soldiers. I think even calling them our soldiers might be a misnomer. We do not fund. We don't really fund it. The weapons are not produced here. I mean, and seeing that we have lost that ground to foreign influence, it can't be surprising that we are the ones they point their guns at. Those aren't our soldiers. In all honesty, that's an alien institution to us. Even beyond that, even on an educational level too, because that's the ability to conceptualize or understand the world, and even make plans to help us navigate what we perceive is another faculty that has been turned backwards for us. I mean, we have to be backwards for this system of operation to function. Like, you need to turn people, institutions have to work backwards for it to oppress people. Like, people go to school to lose their minds. Basically, we don't go there to help us first of all recognize our problems, and okay, how can we strive to solve them. At best, we go there to learn how to solve someone else's problems. Maybe move this file there, move this file there. I mean, there's problems of hunger. And let me even give you an example. You don't really, people don't really go to school with that kind of understanding or mindsets that, okay, I'm going there to help improve my community. Even if you wanted to tell me what program is there for you, you're going there to, okay, to equip yourself with skills that will make you marketable to the highest bidder, because your education is a commodity as well. Your labor is a commodity. So that's a logical progression from that point. So we need to not just organize amongst ourselves. In an insular way, like, say, maybe on the basis of ethnicity or what have you, because as Kwame Nkrumah said, unity presupposes organization, and we are oppressed. I mean, anti-blackness is. I mean, I'd often say it's a pan-European project, but I would say this is a global project, honestly. So we need to organize ourselves at the very least on a continental basis. One astute warning Kwame Nkrumah gave us was said the independence of Ghana would be rendered meaningless if it's not accompanied by the liberation of the African continent itself. I mean, we are every nation in Africa is a continental state. I mean, okay, you have this precarious political freedom, and you have this black freedom too. But you still need to trade with the outside world. You still need to move because no man, no country is an island, especially with this globalization of finance, information, and labor, what have you. So countries are even more interdependent on each other than they ever were at at any point in history as well. So the most imminent task in that sense that okay, we need to at least to, if not to immediately, because of maybe for one constraint or the other, we might not be able to immediately do all we need to do. Like it's not something we are going to dismantle in one stroke, but having this unity amongst ourselves would ultimately undermine and render those divisions meaningless. In fact, we would even have the leverage to challenge and oppose our oppressors as well. And like I've said before, we are the majority. Once we have been able to organize ourselves, our victory is inevitable. It's not we cannot lose, basically. Yeah. So that's my contribution to that.
That was long and insightful. So so I hope that from a bio would be time friendly, so we can take the opinions from.
I can't hear you. Say what?
I said I hope you will be time friendly, so that we can take all three opinions on what Pan-Africanists could do going forward, so that we can, push for the day.
On what Pan-Africanists? I can't really hear you clearly.
I mean, your thoughts, your final thoughts on the question, your final thoughts on the question.
I think Comrade Judy has already outlined the importance of having also buttressing what Comrade Kuma said, the unity of the what's it called, the unity of Africa is very, very much important. The unity of we coming to break the colonial shackles and also the colonial shackles that have put Africa apart. And also if you check the dynamics of how these how these global imperialists have like a relationship with with African countries, you see their might as able to be what's it called to be a negotiating opportunity for them. For instance, now let's see how big the economy of the US is. Although we realize that the economy of the US rely on other global South countries they've been able to exploit. But if a country with that kind of large economy is having a bilateral deal with a country of Mauritius or Niger or Chad, you know. So you won't take out the factor that it's going to be an exploitative relationship. But having been Africa is negotiating on the topic of of continental approach. Like we don't dialogue as as a state, as a sectionalized state. We dialogue as a continent. Then we have the bargaining power to actually have a much larger interest when we having bilateral deals with these so-called imperialist countries. So for us too to also create our own system, our own alternative, having our own military, having our own one currency if that can be attained, just have something that can be able to tie us to also show us our collectiveness because we as like I used to tell people like we understand the facts, historical facts like Africa has been divided into countries and some countries want to hold that position being their own country, but that shouldn't take away the fact that we need to come together under the banner of our continent. Like we need a good economic system, We need social system that will able to bring Africa together. As of today now, I can't move from Nigeria to the neighboring country without them not asking for all these documentations, all those so-called things, you know. So, all those things are part of the things we want to rehabilitate, right? All these things have to be put backward, you know. All those things as barriers on we Africans, we're not able to relate with ourselves, not able to have like a continental goal and continental development. And even this, idea, of coming together is the idea the Europeans wrote from us for them to be able to actualize negotiating for their own interests when they were dealing with the Americans. Because they realized that dialoguing or having a bilateral relationship with America, with that kind of economy that we have, they will become vulnerable to it. So they had to come together as a continent and negotiate with Africa, and negotiate with America. So you can see the advantage, of coming together, of doing things together, of having that Pan-Africanist goal, of how we can be able to add to our, our development. Sorry, our development, all those, all things like that. So, for me, we have a lot of things to do and we have a lot of things to achieve. So, we need to first decolonize ourselves away from the West. And then we have to build a pan-Africanist system of coming together under the banner of Pan-Africanism, under the banner of scientific socialism. And the reason why I mentioned scientific socialism is because I realized that a lot of people are, 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 are coming under the banner of Pan-Africanism for different goals. We have issue of African capitalists. They want to organize, African countries for their own interest. Penetrating the old states, having the advantage to do whatever they want to do. But we don't want that kind of thing. We want a different alternative away from the capitalist system, away from the imperialist structure. So that's my contribution.
Thank you for that. I think that pretty much covers everything. And in summary, I think you're saying that struggle must continue against neoliberal. Can you guys hear me?
No, it's better now.
Oh, I can
Okay,
barely hear you.
No, it's
okay,
before, but now move closer to the mic.
okay, okay. Okay, so I'm saying that in summary, I think what we are saying is that the struggle must continue against neoliberal elements on the continent, and it must also continue against the poverty that has been established across board by the system in place. Just to round up, um, Comrade Tumi is asking. I'm going to put it on the screen now, is asking that how are we going to deal with the what did it come? Oh, sorry, not that one. He said how are we going to deal with the neo-colonialists who are loyal to the imperialists on the continent? Can Commission for under 1 minute? Can you quickly respond to that? Though, comrade,
Uh, the first
though
question
comrade,
too is for Comrade Jide. You can answer that now. The
oh,
At the start of the Pan-Africanist project, how will we draw other African nations into the project? Because the revolution will not occur everywhere on the continent. So how do we spread scientific socialism outwards? That's the
Mm.
question.
uh,
Yes,
I
for
think you
Comrade
should
Jide.
take that because of our time, and I think you should take that. Though even though I
Okay,
agree with
we're almost out of time.
yeah,
Yeah, this thing is is there's nobody who knows which country will have a revolution first, or which country will be at the front, but like I think when Jide was talking about what Kwame Nkrumah said, the liberation of Ghana is meaningless without the liberation of the rest of the continent, and that's what happened in reality when Ghana tried to form federations and tried to form unity. But of course, there were all these neo-colonialists around. But we have that experience. We know that there are a lot of enemies. So how do we
I think I lost the Comrade Jungle. Or is that just me?
Yeah, I think he's having network issues. The West the West are hungry. Well, I agree with what Comrade Prudence
Mm.
said. We have to
Yeah,
eliminate.
maybe I can just chime in from there. Because because like I said
Yeah,
before, we don't really know uh, where this like who. It's not really something we can predict. I don't think anybody has that kind of omniscience. In my opinion, I even expected Nigeria to be late to that party. To be honest, given the history of these very loyal states, as me, I see Nigeria as the best colony anybody has has ever made. But as far drawing other African countries, well, I would prefer to say African people into this project because we have to um, appeal to what we all have in common. Because this is not just a national project. It's not just the concern of people who find themselves in Nigeria. And this, it's not like we are just saying what we are saying because it's what we like or what appeals to us for some special reason. These things are historically determined because, like I've said before, we have to be antithetical to the system that oppresses us, turning the whole thing on its head. That's the essence of what makes people revolutionary. As for spreading it outwards, I think this is more so a question of action as opposed to just philosophy. I mean, to spread, I mean, that already assumes it's something we've already successfully established in Nigeria. I mean, if Nigeria still exists as we know it by that time, I mean, we would have to extend our support to our brothers and sisters across not just even the continent itself, across the world, really. If it's education they need, that will be received. If it's political support, maybe some political coverage, we deliver that as well. If it's resources, we do that. Diplomatic relations and whatnot. And we'd also have to protect them against the scourge that would inevitably be unleashed upon them as a retaliation. And likewise, they would see the necessity to return that favor to us because, like I've said before, this is a problem that we all have in common, honestly. So once the people, because once the people are properly engaged in this system, it's something that's actually quite self-evident. So we unite on that basis, on those bases, on those lines. So it's something actually tangible and coherent as opposed to any whims or maybe even just some incoherent identity politics or whatever these liberals have to confuse us really. So yes, so we have to be scientific and methodical and surgical about this thing.
yeah. Thank you for that, Comrade Jude. Just to add to that, as Comrade Prudence have suggested, that a lot of work is ongoing in other African countries, and she's suggesting a collaborative, efforts to, um, expand on the struggle. She said yeah that there are socialist projects happening in Africa right now. Mm, Eritrea and Zimbabwe. That's why Pan-Africanists in those countries must form ties with each other. The grassroots must link up. Pan-Africanism is a grassroots movement. Of course, it is a grassroots movement, and we realize that, and that is why for us in MOP, we didn't limit ourselves to just because we are a small organization, but we realize that we have to join our organization to do mass work so that we can reach the grassroots to pass the message across and bring everybody to consciousness that they need in order to combat the oppressive system together. So having said that, I want to say thank you to everybody who have joined us today. that we sincerely appreciate your time here. And thank you to all the discussants on the panel. A big thank you to you all as well. Our time is fast spent, so we have to go now. And though the recording will be available on our page, so you can check back and to watch and give your thoughts. So yeah, thank you everybody, and have a great day. Bye.